Hi, I'm Andrew Kane, State Politics Editor of the Richmond Times-Dispatch, and with me are my colleagues Michael Martz and Dave Ress, who have done a lot of great reporting on data centers, which are a big issue in Virginia. And one of the issues with data centers is while they bring a lot of revenue to localities, they also require a great deal of energy, which is putting a lot of tension on the grid. So, Dave, why don't you characterize for us just how much energy these require?
Well, the ones that are already here use as much electricity as very nearly 900,000 homes. The ones that are lining up to come, more or less seriously, are talking about using enough electricity for something like 10 million homes. And the problem is, Virginia is already in a position where we have to import power from other states to meet our current demand. And that power is extremely expensive and the price of it's been rising really sharply.
Right. So, Michael, we're getting to a point where something's got to give, right?
I talked to Mark Christie, who was a former chairman of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, also a longtime member of the State Corporation Commission. He's been warning for years that we're facing a potential energy crisis because we don't have the supplies. Either in-state that we generate ourselves, and traditionally Dominion Energy has done it itself, or purchasing from out of state through what they call the PJM interconnect. Mr. Christie said that the scope of the energy needs that the data centers will generate is staggering. And he said, for every data center cluster, we're getting another Manhattan in Northern Virginia. And then he said, well, if Dominion hooks up all of the data centers that we're requiring like 40 gigawatts of power, then the question is who pays? And that's an issue that has already gotten the attention of Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, who has said she doesn't want residential customers and small businesses to have to pay to buy generation capacity and build transmission lines and substations to serve data centers, that they should pay their own way or perhaps generate their own electricity.
Now, Dave, you've already reported that the typical bill for Dominion has already gone up from about $119 for the monthly bill to about $157.
That's right. Well, and a lot of that has been because Dominion has all along been having to build the transmission lines and basically at this point the transmission lines and acquiring some of the generating capacity needed to meet all this already growing demand. Going forward, they're already asking for more rate increases in the order of about 13% across the board. And some of this is for the investment they're going to have to continue to make. With that, at the same time, they're trying to address the issue that Abigail Spanberger, the governor-elect, has raised of who pays for what with a special rate class for data centers.
And Michael, another consideration here is going to come before the General Assembly because in 2020, lawmakers passed the Virginia Clean Economy Act, which was meant to over time wean the state off of fossil fuels, but the data center folks or the electric folks are saying that they've got to be assured of the capacity.
I think it's going to create a political debate around natural gas because that is relatively clean compared to coal, but it's still a fossil fuel. It still emits greenhouse gases. And if you relax that standard too much, then there's no way the state can meet the law's goal of being carbon free by 2045 in Dominion's territory. And so the problem is, how do you generate the enormous amounts of electricity that's necessary to serve this data center load, which President Trump is certainly encouraging? How do you do that without relying on fossil fuels and basically giving up on the climate change crisis and saying that's for another day?
So you can see this as a really thorny issue, and it's going to be a challenge for the legislators who return to Richmond in January. So I want to thank my colleagues, Dave Ress and Michael Martz, for their very good reporting. And we encourage all of you to follow our coverage on data centers on richmond.com and in the Richmond Times-Dispatch.